All right, welcome to part two of whatever I'm going to call this. Okay, so you can look at this, you can do it your way. You can go back and get the whole linear method, so you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. I'm calling it part two for a reason, or you can just jump in there, man, and swim. So let's go. This is called Spirit Science. Now, this is real corny. I'm going to tell you right now, it's real corny, but I'm looking at it for the babies, and I think there might be some connections we can draw when we pull what we got in part one. I mean, we just dropped some interesting drop from the Emerald tablet. So pull that up, pull up the link, go back to part one and get that if you got to. If you're vibing from part one, let's go. This is Spirit Science, the human history movie. They're gonna put it together in their own esoteric, abstract way. They're going to talk about the pole shifts and how the globe this and globe that. So, of course, they don't got all the drop if they think they're on a globe, right? So that eliminates, them from having all the drop. But at the same time, they are going to break down a little bit of the Emerald tablets, a little bit of the Thoth drop, Atlantis, Egypt. And I want to try to tie that together with what we're pulling together from the Emerald tablets, from Greek mythology, from our research coming in different directions, and of course from our scriptures. All right, so it's a Spirit Science, and we'll have fun with this and see where it takes us.
Over the last few thousand years, we have warped our own history. Our stories of the past have been changed, altered, mistranslated, and completely been misunderstood as we rounded the curve on the precession of the equinox. Modern views of our history account for many things, but completely dismiss many very important pieces in the puzzle. For example, the pyramids of Giza. There is no modern theory that accounts for how these could have been made. Individually, each block cannot be pulled even with 50 men pulling it, let alone drag it for hundreds of miles and then stack them on top of each other 450 feet in the air, in such a precise way that even modern technology can't achieve. Not to mention having it lined up precisely with both Orion's belt, a golden mean and Fibonacci spiral, and be a primary nodal point of every sacred site on the planet. And that's just one example. Our history is not what we think. Many things that we've been led to believe to be true simply is not. This has got to be the biggest. The field of archaeology recently saw some monumental discoveries that are rocking the foundation of what we think we know about ourselves. Many ancient cities such as Babylon, Erech, and Akkad that were written about in the Bible and other ancient texts were always thought to be myths because no one could prove they existed. Then,
it's always going back to the Bible, right? So again, we know the Bible is a collection of stories and books and all this kind of stuff, the Biblios. So let's focus on the first five. Let's focus on the Torah. Let's focus on the part that we can at least get back in the tablets. We can at least look and decipher ourselves once we understand the paleo. You know what I'm saying? So that's not going back to the Greek and predates a time of any colonization, right? So we're not talking about let me hand you your this. I'm saying go back and look at the scrolls if you got to match this up. Look at the artifacts if you got to. The Back Creek stones, the Decalogue stones, these 10 commandments that's found. Some saying dating back 1000 BC to 2000 BC. I mean, either way, it's matching up with these migration patterns of the Aztecs and the so-called Maya, right? Now you got their stone tablets. We'll get to those. But, so, rock with it.
one of them was found. This led to finding another, and then another. Inside one of these cities, archaeologists found thousands of cylindrical clay tablets hidden deep within the earth under this ancient city. The tablets were completely covered in text, written in cuneiform, and tell an ancient story that spans back over hundreds of thousands of years on this planet, describing the history of the Earth and the origins of the human race in great detail. Now, the first thing we all want to do is just say that they were making things up. They didn't know the history of Earth, and they were simply creating tales to explain where they came from. However, if this was true, how can we explain how they knew so many things about the universe that would seem impossible to know? Not only did the Dogons know all about the distant planets in the solar system, but so did the Sumerians. They described them all in great detail in these Sumerian records. They also knew about the precession of the equinox. That's a tough one for a historian to understand.
They all knew all these great mysteries of the celestial, all this great knowledge of the stars. But who's connecting to Heya Heya? Who's connecting to that above the frequency? That's when we get hijacked, when we get lost in the stars. So you're going to see all this stuff correlating with all these tribes and people that knew about the stars, because that's the first thing these fallen angels was teaching everybody about the celestial, about the underworld. You'll get to a point where he says, man, I found that whatever is buried underneath the Great Pyramid, according to the Emerald Tablets of what Tahuti Thoth is saying, he said that stuff was already there. He didn't even put it there. You know what I mean? So how far are we going back? How are we connecting? You know what I'm saying? Clearly, there's been a confederacy against you, right? Psalms 83.
Because it takes over 2,000 years of continuous observation to actually learn that the Earth has a wobble. The Sumerians had this information from day one of their civilization. A man named Zacharias Sitchin spent a long time transcribing these texts and had put them all together in his books. But many others have also done the same, and the interpretations are always very similar. Not only that, but Thoth has also shared information about this with us, and his account matches the Sumerian records. Adamas and other channelings discuss it as well. If you see all of these records and sources, there is a huge connection between...
Again, they're into their own esoteric thing. We're looking for the babies because he went back to the Bible, right? So there's concrete in this. And in that concrete, whatever he's going back to the Bible for, whatever the concrete he's looking for, they're looking for, whoever these people are, with these funny animations. You know what I'm saying? Whatever the esoteric thing is, there's concrete in that. And that's where you come in. You see, nobody can get concrete. They got to draw animations. They can't show you because that's too politically incorrect. You know, that truth will irritate people. So they want to not really irritate people, but just to drop some science on them and call it spirit science. They ain't dropping your commandments on you, right? But they are going to go back to your scriptures, right? To correlate their information like all archaeologists do, right? Lego. Spirit science.
Stories. Now, this story spans back hundreds of thousands of years into our past. It talks about Tiamat and Nibiru, the Nephilim, seeding the human race, Adam and Eve, and the children of Lemuria. This portion of the story is really interesting, but not the most crucial to know. We're not going to be covering this at this time. We are, however, going to be picking up the story at the end of Lemuria and discussing the events of Atlantis up to present.
Okay, so that's our timeline right now. The end of Lemuria into the beginning of Atlantis. That's what we're discussing, right? And that's when we have the artifacts that's coming in that we're calling Egypt, right? But these are titles from them, right? So again, shout out to Harem Art. You got to stay off these titles so we can understand the picture. Don't call it Egypt. That's what they called it, right? So whatever this was, if we're matching it up with scripture, we're fallen angels mixing in, creating giants, creating these things, and these things set up these 10 kings and these rulership classes and parties, and they ruled the people. So you're going to see when they go into how they were ruling the people, and they had them in the frequency. And then Thoth Tahuti says in his own Emerald Tablet, number 1, Tablet 1, that when he went to the land of Kim, after Atlantis sunk, check out part 1 if you haven't seen it, check out the documentation, that when he went to the land of Ham, to so-called Africa, it was after Atlantis had already sunk. Now you got the flood. Now you got the days of Peleg. Now you got a new thing being set up on the indigenous people. And he said these people attacked him with spears. And he put a vibration on them. Confused these people. Did some magic on them. And he's had them in a vibration ever since. And those are the Cometians. Cometians are not Egyptians. There is no such thing as Egypt. That's Atlantis. That's why there's two metanetas, you know what I'm saying, symbols for Egypt and Kemet. Kemet was the land they went to next and bred with those indigenous people and set up dynasties there, but they had already bred with the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, which is why the pyramids or mounds predate those over there. They set that up in the 18th dynasty. Thoth, who's writing the Emerald Tablets, is Tutmosis III. But again, he said he incarnated over 1,000 times. So you're talking about a fallen angel who's possessing a human form as Tutmosis III, setting up an 18th dynasty because he was continuing the dynasties of the Atlantean kings, which is Atlas. That's what we're getting into. That's what we're looking for. And those are the babies.
Day. What I'm going to tell you is a mix of what these records say, along with what Thoth has told us for some finer details.
I'm going to back it up a little bit because, you know, we're building here, so... No, he's telling you. What I'm telling you is a myth mixed with some other stuff. So shout out to Lex Will who broke down syncretinism. Cretans, mixing things. So he's going to give you some more syncretinism. He's going to give you a mixture, but we're looking for the babies in the mixture. So don't let it confuse you. Now that we have our orientation, we can really weigh this evidence and see what we're talking about.
But many others have also done the same, and the interpretations are always very similar. Not only that, but Thoth has also shared information about this with us, and his account matches the Sumerian records. Adamus and other channelings discuss it as well. If you see all of these records and sources, there is a huge connection between the stories. Now, this story spans back hundreds of thousands of years into our past. It talks about Tiamat and Nibiru, the Nephilim, seeding the human race, Adam and Eve, and the children of Lemuria. This portion of the story is really interesting, but not the most crucial to know. We're not going to be covering this at this time. We are, however, going to be picking up the story at the end of Lemuria, and discussing the events of Atlantis up to present day. What I'm going to tell you is a mix of what these records say, along with what Thoth has told us for some finer details. Please have your own experience while watching this. I'm not going to tell you that this is fact. I am simply saying, decide for yourself.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's hypothesize. Well, we know that ain't real. We know that ain't real, right? Okay.
There was a time, long ago, when humans existed at a very high level of consciousness. We were interdimensional, and were very psychic. We communicated through thought and emotion, much like how animals do, rather...
So let's put it in context so that we understand. When he says humans, he's not talking about people from the Caucasus Mountains, right? We understand that. He's talking about indigenous melanated people. He says we, you're going to hear a lot of we's. He's including himself with these indigenous melanated peoples. And he is not included in this particular category. I mean, we gotta, if we're in it for truth, we gotta just, say, all right, so let's be truthful. All right, so that's what we're talking about. He's talking about you. You, at one time, were communicating on higher levels. This is before he ain't got to the part. Look, man. All right. You were communicating on high levels. So when people say, oh, there was no written language before X, Y, and Z, it's because they didn't need one. People think that you need a written language to be high society. What if your 12 strands were connected and you were telepathic and didn't need to write anything? What if you all this was stored already? It just was. What if there isn't it? Do you think at the higher heavens they sitting down writing stories? Or do we need stories to communicate because we're not telepathic? Because we're not, you know what I'm saying, we don't have our power, right? So we need to find a way to preserve the information. And that's where writing comes in. Now you have writing. After the fall.
Than speaking or writing, which would seem very primitive. We lived primarily on a large string of islands.
It's not primitive, right?
But there was a consciousness shift. We moved up in consciousness, and the islands of Lemuria sank beneath the oceans. At the time of this shift, a new continent rose out of the water.
So there was a higher vibration that now this Lemuria situation sunk. Okay, according to what he's saying. Now you have people call this Lemerica. Lemerica. Is that any connection to Lemuria? Whatever it is, when you hear him talking about Lemuria, he ain't talking about the fallen angel seed. He's talking about native people. And that's my understanding of the context we're in.
We called it Atlantis. Back in the early 1900s, the spiritual path of the United States was similar to what's happening today. People began to learn about meditation and study ancient lands like Atlantis and Lemuria. We actually found quite a bit of evidence.
So he said Lemuria sunk and then Atlantis rose, all right? So now we're talking about these lands rising, which possibly now we're talking about America, North America rising out the ocean, possibly.
That Lemuria existed, and it had to do with coral. See, the ocean floor does rise and fall. Coral can exist up to 150 feet under the surface of the water. In 1910, the surface of the ocean was probably higher because they were able to see coral rings heading away from Easter Islands for a great distance. These rings were estimated to be found at 1,800 feet, which means that for them to have existed, they would have had to be much higher and sunk slowly. Probably more important, they also found the exact same fauna and flora from the Hawaiian Islands all the way to the Easter Islands. This is a great distance, but if you look at a map, you'll see a long string. That string, according to Thoth, used to run along the western shores of Lemuria. It is only on these islands that have the same flora and fauna. Same trees, bugs, bacteria, everything. Science can only explain this if there were closer land bridges between these islands at one point. Although we were studying this at that time, World War I began soon after, and we lost interest in spirituality and the ancient lands for a very long time. After the sinking of...
Okay. Well, they say World War I, so that's our timeline. I'm just stopping so we understand the context. So I don't want to just let this play just to do it. All right, so we got to build from this. So World War I, I'm building with you, right? So now we got what's that? Late 1800s? Wait, let's back it up. Because he's saying World War I broke out and we lost. What did he say? What did he say? Where'd it go?
In 1910, the surface of the ocean was probably higher because they were able to see
1910?
coral rings heading away from Easter Islands for a great distance.
1910 the surface?
These rings were estimated to be found at 1,800 feet, which means that for them to have existed, they would have had to be much higher and sunk slowly. Probably more important, they also found the exact same fauna and flora from the Hawaiian Islands all the way to the Easter Islands. This is a great distance, but if you look at a map, you'll see a long string. That string, according to Thoth, used to run along the western shores of Lemuria.
Makes sense.
It is only on these islands that have the same flora and fauna. Same trees, bugs, bacteria.
All one land. All
Science
one
can
land.
only explain this if there were closer land bridges between these islands at one point. Although we were studying this at that time, World War I began soon after, and we lost interest in spirituality and the ancient lands for a very planet, describing the history of the Earth and the origins of the human race in great detail.
I went back.
Now, the first thing we all want to do is just say that they were making things up. They didn't know the history of components on the mainland, and even though science can only explain this if there were closer land bridges between these islands at one point. Although we were studying this at that time, World War I began soon after, and we lost interest in spirituality.
World War I began. Whoa. Look, I've seen this, but I haven't really, there's a lot of things that I missed. So, World War I breaks out. So, whatever date that is, I could look it up now, but, you do it. So, we know, at least relatively, we're talking about World War I. Is that the early 1900s or late 1800s? I can't think right now, but whoa, he just fast forwarded like a mug, right? So you thought we was talking about 20,000 years ago, and he just told you World War I. So when I tell you Atlantis was sunk and when it was sunk might match the flood, might match the days of Pele, might match the migration patterns of the Mayan and Aztec, migrating from one place to another. They didn't have to come from, they had to come from Africa. Do the Mayans say they came from Africa? Do the Aztecs say they came from Africa? Do the people of Australia say they came from Africa? Do the people of Solomon Islands, the Solomon Islands, say they came from Africa? This is my point, is that people that are where they're at were where they're at. When things got divided, these were the people that were still indigenous on the parts that got divided. But it's still one land. But they say, I'm from right here, because they were already there. Everybody didn't come out of Africa like the white man say. Or else he wouldn't be inquiring about us in the Boston Society, having these things published in the Vatican of saying, I don't know who these people are. If it was a slam dunk we came out of Africa, they would have said, oh, look, we got some more Africans. They said, man, this is another melanated group of people that are separated at some point. It's because we were always where we're at. So the majority of us in America that are melanated are from right here. And they took you from here in the 1500s, 1600s, 17, whatever, 18, and they took you elsewhere. They took you back to so-called Egypt or so-called, whatever they want to call it. But they took you back to bondage. That's what you have to focus on. Don't look at the script and say, oh, Egypt, prophecy, Egypt. What does it mean? What does it mean in the Hebrew? What is the etymology? Bondage. So they took you back to bondage. You just got out. They came and got you back. That's prophecy.
And the ancient lands for a very long time. After
World
the
War
sinking of
I.
Lemuria and the rising of Atlantis, at first the human race became scattered. We moved to various islands and continents all over the world because we didn't have a home. Yet, we didn't know where to go.
Whoa. So we moved to various islands and continents because we didn't have a home. Is he talking about you, or is he now talking about himself? Is he now talking about the colonizers going from place to place because they didn't have a home? So instead of World War I, can we just back it up a few hundred years? Is that safe for our journey, our hypothesis, and say what him saying World War One just brought us to the present. Can we now make that Columbus's time? The Spaniards, the conquest throughout the 1800s, 1700s? Can that relatively match up with this World War One conversation? And now these people are going places and doing things because they got nowhere else to go. Because remember, in Rome, you have dark melanated people ruling Rome. The King of Spain and Portugal. Look, Charles and King James and all these people have, it's already been proven that they are dark people, but they are Hebrews, yes. But are they Israel? Is that prophecy that we're going to have kings in Rome? Ruling people? No. This is servitude, man. You were servants there, being ruled by dark Edomites. Dark Hebrews. These dark Hebrews, you know what I mean? These kings, this royalty of Portugal and Spain, they sent their mercenaries over here. Their generals were still very melanated. When you heard Spaniard back then, you thought dark person. Because we know the Moors, right? We understand that. We understand the Amorites, right? So they sent them over here to you. These dark people sent them over to these dark people. And they used these people as a proxy, as mercenaries. So now when you think Spaniard, you think white ass Columbus. These were mercenaries. They invaded you. And he's saying they didn't have a land. These mercenaries, their home, like Lex Will said, was sunk a long time ago. Where are they going to go? Let's listen to that again. I'm glad he said World War One, or I would not have connected that he is talking for show about present time period.
It's only on these islands that have the same flora and fauna.
This is part 2.
Same trees,
It might be
bugs,
part 5
bacteria,
to this.
Everything. Science can only explain this if there were closer land bridges between these islands at one point. Although we were studying this at that time, World War I began soon after, and we lost interest in spirituality and the ancient lands for a very long time. After the sinking of Lemuria and the rising of Atlantis, at first the human race became scattered. We moved to various islands and continents all over the world because we didn't have a home. Yet.
So in the Greek mythology, alright, you got Athena, you got Poseidon. Poseidon's doing all this slick stuff. Athena turns him down. He's trying to get, you know what I'm saying, knock the boots, do different things. They end up having some beef. And then they take it up to Zeus. You know what I mean? And then Zeus says, all right, let's do a vote, but I'm not going to vote. I'm going to keep my vote out. They vote. All the female gods, right? The 6 of them, they get behind Athena. The male gods, they get behind Poseidon. But Zeus keeps his vote out. So therefore, by default, the women win, right? Athena wins. So that's when Athens defeats the Atlanteans and Plato and Socrates' writings. Then they said the Pillars of Hercules fell and all this. Then they finally got out. They finally got out of the Mediterranean Sea. Remember, they were just trapped in the middle. This was the true ocean. This was Europe, Africa. So they were just trapped in the middle. This was their only out to get out the pillars, the Canary Islands, all that. I'll show you. Just go back and watch that drop. Insular worlds, Atlantis, all that. And when they finally got out, let's say that this was Atlantis. Let's say that this was it. This was sunken, and other places else was sunken. And if this was Peru and South America, that still stands, but all this was sunk around it. And that's mainly where the wicked were. That's mainly where these fallen angels were. And that's your destruction, also the flood, according to my theory. So now they're going from place to place. They're trying to set up shop. Let's see where they set up shop. Let's go.
We didn't know where to go. At that time, there were about 1,000 humans at a very high consciousness, more than all of the rest. They were called the Nials.
Okay.
Today, we know them as Ascended Masters.
Okay.
The Nials began preparing Atlantis to be our new home. They projected their energies across the surface of the continent in the form of the Tree of Life, not with 10 circles, but with 12, an extra on top on the island of Udal, and an extra on the bottom in the water. There were 10 components on the mainland, and even though it extended over hundreds of miles on the surface, it was projected to the accuracy of a single atom. We chose to move to Atlantis because of the Kundalini. In humans, the Kundalini is often referred to as the energy serpent that runs up and down your spine. When activated, it provides an immense amount of energy through all of the chakras.
They're just talking
the
energy.
Earth itself also has a Kundalini because the Earth is alive, like an organism, running from the center of the planet to a specific place on the surface.
So they're going to give you truth and show you some bullshit, right? So the earth is an organism, yes. It's one body, yes. It doesn't look like that. They haven't even been able to dig past, 12 miles? They got no idea what's in here, but they want to give it to you as a fact and say, look, it's coming from the surface. I just kind of got that as I'm looking at it from their heliocentric model. They want you to believe that, look, imagine this was Egypt. Imagine this was the Pyramid of Giza. Thoth or Tahuti says that he built the halls of Amentes, the underworld, underneath the underworld, right? Sheol. But look how they got the energy coming out the underworld. So they're getting energy, what they're calling the Kundalini spy coming from inside. They're calling the underworld energy. Are they saying that you're getting your energy from Heya, who's way up here above the throne? No, that's Israel's energy. Their energy comes from the underworld. You see the trickery. While they gave you the Baal, they gave you the trickery, really the drop, their drop of where they get their energy from in the halls of Amentes. And that's the power of the grids and the pyramids, which you'll see. And that's what's fueling them. But they don't, I don't think, have access to certain parts of this right now. But we'll see. But do you see the bullshit? Do you see the Baal? And do you see where they're getting their energy? You come from the throne. They're cutting you off so you don't resonate above it. Let's go.
Wherever the Kundalini resides, the people there become the spiritual leaders of the world.
Right.
The Earth chose Atlantis to be the new energetic center of the planet.
Okay.
After Atlantis, the Kundalini moved to the mountains of Tibet, which is why the Buddhists were the leaders in pure spirituality for the last 13,000 years.
Is that
a pure place. It moved to...
Right? Is that Heya? Yes, this enlightened energy is enlightened. What are they doing for Israel? Here's how you know if it's Heya before you start defending the Buddhists and all, whatever, the Kundalinis and everybody trying to be on this underworld energy, this celestial energy underneath the firmament. The world underneath, the world that cannot surpass the vibration layer, which you will see. In Tablet 8 of the Emerald Tablets, Thoth breaks down, Tahuti breaks down, how he has to run his ass off from the barrier, from the hounds that protect the barrier. The barrier is the firmament, and there are hounds that they're calling that protect it. Anybody close, they got to then move in circles to outrun them. Because these things move according to angles. Right? Look at it like a cube. And they got to move in circles to get back to their body to outrun the hounds. And sometimes it don't work. And if the hounds catch your ass, they hold you for judgment until the time of judgment. That's why you got to run your ass off. Tahuti had to run his ass off. Thoth. He said even his master has to run his ass off. Why would his master of the light, who's that, Mastema? Why would he have to run his ass off from the hounds? Because even he's not allowed up there anymore. Do you understand? Do you understand? If you're banging Kemet, that's what you're banging. Underneath the firmament, the celestial, the high sciences, right? The mysteries. And it's cool because you got the drop on the layman until one person connects above the firmament. Then many connect and they remember and they're going to look at you like you're crazy. And they're going to ask for answers.
Again, within the last 10 years, but that's a story for another time. If you want to read more, check out the book The Serpent of Light by Drunvalo Melchizedek. Suddenly, in a single day, the Nials breathed life into the Tree of Life on the surface of Atlantis. This created vortexes of energy rotating out of each and every circle. Once the vortexes were established, the children of Lemuria began to be called forth. Millions upon millions of Lemurians who had settled all across the planet began to be pulled toward Atlantis. A great migration began. However, the Lemurian body of consciousness had only reached the age of 12 as a planetary consciousness. Because we were right-brained, we were a female species, like a 12-year-old girl, and some of our centers weren't working yet. They had worked with these energies, but only mastered 8 of the 10. Each migrating Lemurian was attracted to one of these 8 centers on Atlantis, depending on the nature of the individual. There, they settled and began to build cities. That left 2 vortexes with nobody using them, not a single person. These 2 vortexes were pulling life.
Now, you can look at them like vortexes, like some abstract thing they're saying, which, I'm sure the energies thing, I'm sure they're dropping something else. Or you can look at it like, well, look at it the way you want to look at it. I don't want to tell you how to look at it. This is a journey for me and you. You hypothesize, I hypothesize. I don't want to shape that for you. I have a way of looking at it, but I don't want to share all of my personal things. I want you to develop on your own as well. So keep watching and see how they're talking about these vortexes and who comes in these vortexes and how they are going to now try to describe the Hebrews. Right? These Hebrews that just come out of nowhere. You know, but maybe there's babies in there. Maybe they're talking about that Ruach hitting the earth. Let's go.
Toward them, and in life, you can't have an empty place. Life will find a way to fill it. Similar to if you were driving along a freeway, following another car, and you drop too far behind, someone will fill the place. That's exactly what happened on Atlantis. Though the Lemurians had only filled 8 of the vortex areas, Mayan records state clearly that there were 10 cities in Atlantis when it fell. You can see these records in the Troano document, which is now located in the British Museum. This document is estimated to be 3,500 years old, and it describes in detail the sinking of Atlantis. To fill these 2 extra vortexes, according to Thoth, 2 extraterrestrial races stepped in. Not one, but 2 completely different races.
Pay attention.
The first race were the Hebrews, coming from our future. Thoth says that they came from off-planet, but we don't know where exactly. The Hebrews were kind of like a kid who went through 5th grade and didn't make it, so they had to do that grade over again. They learned all the math, the left brain stuff, but they didn't get the right brain aspect of evolving consciousness, the doing. They didn't graduate to the next level of evolution, so they had to do it again. They knew a lot of things that we didn't know yet and brought many concepts and ideas to us that we weren't aware of yet. Now, if this is true, this would explain quite a few things about the Hebrew people in general. They seem to have many sacred geometries hidden within their culture. It also puts perspective on the story of Exodus. Perhaps Moses incarnated into that lifetime to free the Hebrews because they were not direct descendants of humans and were being treated unfairly.
Whoa. So now we're just talking Ruach. Alright, let's back up. Remember, Tesla, who tried to give you free energy, they wouldn't allow him to give you free energy, which would have made everything free. You understand what I'm saying? He said, if you really want to understand the secrets of the universe, which I'm just going to say the secrets of energy, which is the secrets of the understanding, you must break it down into energy, frequency, and vibration. Energy, frequency, and vibration. So what vibration is this? We know it's a bunch of bull, but where's the babies? I think we found a couple babies. So now we're saying that he's saying, I'll back it up actually one time for you. I want you to hear that again, if I can find it. Well, let me just say this quickly, and I'll back it up. So he said, the Hebrews just came into this vortex, right? And they were like a 5-year-old and all this kind of stuff. He's trying to say that they mastered the left brain stuff, but didn't really evolve, right? So now you got like our old kings and our old people that, mastered certain things about the law, and they left brain fashion. I'm just journeying with you. And they left brain fashion, but didn't really understand the drop beyond the sacrifices. And okay, I'm just going to keep messing up and keep sacrificing things. Like they didn't understand the drop beyond it. The priest didn't understand it. At some point, they were given the drop. I mean, I shouldn't say the priest. I'm sure the priest understood, but the people, they, as you know in the script, as we started kneeling our knee to the Baal, as our women started baking cakes to the Queen Mother, these things fell. Our priesthood fell. Our drop fell. So then all they had was, okay, this is just the law, right? The Sadducees and all this kind of stuff, right? Now they're just law, but they forgot the love. They forgot the understanding. They forgot the frequency, man. So he's saying that this Moshe came back in the frequency, probably, to free his people that have been subjugated. Where? You're going to read about how the Atlanteans subjugated the people, right? We just read. Go back to part 1. Keep pausing. Go back and forth if you have to. Don't be so linear. It's okay. Watch 5 minutes. Go eat some Cocoa Puffs. Come back. Go get some coconut milk. Come back. All right. Go back to part 1. Come back. Research. Come back. Don't try to just absorb. It's okay. It's a lot, man. I had to take a break. Asked Chef Candy. She's like, man, you ain't sleeping. You know what I mean? I was like, man, it's so much drop, man. It's crazy. I mean, it literally makes you feel like you're going crazy. And that's really part of the activation process, and you got to relax. So let's watch this again. Because if we're hearing this right, he's saying that, you know, he came to free his people, right? Who was already being subjugated, because we had been subjugated in Atlantis when Poseidon, or when these figures, this Thoth and them came with their vibration on us here. And then, after they destroyed this place, the Most High destroyed it because of them. And then the Nephilim and the giants, and then they went to Kemet, and they set up shop, and that's when your 18th dynasty picks up. Thutmose III, we'll get to it. I got the documentation. I'm just letting you watch some animated drop right quick. Mix it up, right? We mix it and match it, milk it and box. Let's back it up, see what we're talking about. And I'll let it rock now that I got that up.
Lemurians had only filled 8 of the vortex areas. Mayan records state clearly that there were 10 cities in Atlantis when it fell. You can see these records in the Troano document, which is now located in the British Museum. This document is estimated to be 3,500 years old, and it describes in detail the sinking of Atlantis. To fill these 2 empty vortexes, according to Thoth, 2 extraterrestrial races stepped in. Not 1, but 2 completely different races. The first race were the Hebrews, coming from our future. Thoth says that they came from off-planet, but we don't know where exactly. The Hebrews were kind of like a kid who went through 5th grade and didn't make it, so they had to do that grade over again. They learned all the math, the left brain stuff,
right,
but they didn't get the right brain aspect of evolving consciousness, the doing. They didn't graduate to the next level of evolution,
so we had to
do it again.
They didn't graduate to the next level. Not forget the evolution, all right? The next level, right? So now this is our graduation. Are you ready? But we're not doing no Masonic stuff. We don't have to wear those caps. We don't have to get a degree. We're going to get the full Monty. We're connecting back to the throne. We're being revived, reconnected, reestablished. Hey. And that's what it is. And that's what it's going to be. Nah, here we go, man. Vibe with me, man. This is fun. This got to be fun for you. Don't take it too serious. Just let it vibe. It's a vibration you're on, right? So don't try to be left brain like he's talking about. How we had to evolve past being left brain and where's your sources? Where's your sources? We have to connect inside of us to the throne. Each and every one of us. And together we form a consciousness, our own consciousness above the static that's been laid out just for you. You didn't create it, right? But it's for you. It's your playground, but it's above the firmament. Their pyramids, for the most part, are keeping us below the firmament, connecting us to the celestial, the magic, the sciences. But is it freeing you? Name one pyramid that freed you in history. So is that energy order or chaos? What's the result? What has been the result of these pyramids? Open your eyes and use your senses.
They knew a lot of things that we didn't know yet and brought many concepts and ideas to us that we weren't aware of yet. Now, if this is true, this would explain quite a few things about the Hebrew people in general. They seem to have many sacred geometries hidden within their culture. It also puts perspective on the story of Exodus. Perhaps Moses incarnated into that lifetime to free the Hebrews because they were not direct descendants of humans and were being treated unfairly. Or could it be that Moses was visited by an ascendant?
Because they were not direct descendants of humans and were being treated unfairly? Or because we were the indigenous people, we were being carved out, and we were being treated unfairly because they weren't human. See how we flipped it? He said because you guys weren't really human and therefore... No, you're the fallen angel. You're the Nephilim. You don't have a habitation here. You have no inheritance because you're not natural. You have to be grafted into nature. And the only way to do that is to choose up. And stop flipping it. It's flip-flop. So you were the natives. In those natives was a people carved for himself. An energy, a ruach put in these people. And Moshe was freeing us from them. From the rulership of the 440, of the chief of the 440. Let my people go.
master of the Hebrews who guided him to free their people. Given what we know about dimensions and consciousness, it definitely puts a fresh perspective on old stories that didn't make much sense. We could talk about this more, but let's continue for now.
Oh, let's talk
about it.
There
were no problems caused by the Hebrews coming to Atlantis. They actually benefited our evolution.
Oh.
The other race that stepped in caused big problems. These beings came from the nearby planet of...
You see how they make you look like foreigners? Because they don't want you to know it's your land, so these Hebrews got to be something new. What do you say, World War I? Now I'm confused. Because he's flipping it. But at least we know it. Now look how he flips this Mars story. These Martians and these pyramids on Mars. You can't land on Mars. So all this stuff you're seeing on Mars is really their own. A lot of that stuff is photoshopped from stuff they're finding here. And they say that's Mars and they use their stuff. But it's really just these old canyons and pyramids and stuff that they're finding here, right here in the US of A. And they're calling it Mars. You can look it up yourself, Mars hoaxes, and you'll see. You'll see. Open your eyes. So if Mars cannot be inhabited, then it's angelic, right? It's a fallen entity, an angel, an energy. And these people are coming from a fallen energy, we already know. The Zeus, Poseidon, Mercury, Mars, and all these lower luminaries. They are wandering stars. They are underneath the order of the fixed stars. They are out of the order of them. Yet, even the fixed stars are within the firmament. They are not energies that vibrate above it. There's order. Look how they flipped the Mars. And this Mars story, I'm telling you straight up, is the story of your oppressor. Is the story of the colonizer. Is the story of himself. He's telling his own story, but look how he tells it.
Mars. See, according to Thoth, Mars looked very much like Earth a little less than 1 million years ago.
1 million!
Beautiful. It had oceans and water and trees that were just fantastic.
Right.
But something happened to them, and it has to do with something called the Lucifer experiment. From the very beginning of creation, everything is simply an experiment. Creation itself was just consciousness.
Any questions? Now they're going to go Flower of Life. They're going to make it look nice like the 432, right? They're going to spin that on it. But he just said the Lucifer experiment. And now they're playing with energy. They know the secrets of energy, vibration. They know order. But they've created their own grid and put order in it. They put their own order in it. But at the top of their order is still the Most High's order. My Stima still had to beg Heya for 1/10 of the angels to confound you with today. There is order there. Some don't know that. But they called it the what experiment? Again, this might be a 6-part series.
Or could it be that Moses was visited by an ascended master of the Hebrews who guided him to free their people? Given what we know about dimensions and consciousness, it definitely puts a fresh perspective on old stories that didn't make much sense. We could talk about this more, but let's continue for now. There were no problems caused by the Hebrews coming to Atlantis. They actually benefited our evolution. The other race that stepped in caused big problems. These beings came from the nearby planet of Mars. See, according to Thoth, Mars looked very much like Earth a little less than 1 million years ago. It was beautiful. It had oceans and water and trees that were just fantastic.
They came from their islands, but their islands were sunk, so they were nomads. They were going from place to place. They had no land, so they were taking everybody else's. And this vortex shit is bullshit. These people just came and got on your land and took over. And he's telling you your story in an animated, mocking way. But you have to open your eyes, chew the meat, spit out the bones.
But something happened to them, and it has to do with something called the Lucifer experiment.
Whoa!
From the very beginning of creation, everything is simply an experiment. Creation itself was just consciousness creating and inhabiting itself in that creation. There is no divine plan.
What? So this sounds like the Lucifer experiment. Creation was just creating, and it was just creating on itself, right? Does that sound like order or chaos? Shout out to Smooth Perspective, because he dropped that. Look up his drop, Order or Chaos. And in their encyclopedias, they break down that it started with chaos. That first was chaos. First was the Big Bang, right? All that is the beginning. If you're into that type of stuff, evolution, you're into Lucifer. If you're into religion, you're into Lucifer. If you're into anything but restoring Israel and the real people on their own land and fighting for them and with them, you're into Lucifer. If you're against them returning to their land in any way spiritually, that's Lucifer. You have to shake it, and you have to choose up. Look how they just dropped this. And again, I didn't mean to pause it. I have to pause it. This might be a 12-part series. I already told you this. Let me get back a little bit. What did he just say?
Because they were not direct descendants of humans and were being treated unfairly. Or could it be that Moses was visited by an ascended master of the Hebrews who guided him to free their people? Given what we know about dimensions and consciousness, it definitely puts a fresh perspective on old stories that didn't make much sense. We could talk about this more, but let's continue for now.
Make no sense to you.
There were no problems caused by the Hebrews coming to Atlantis. They actually benefited our evolution.
Look how dark they are.
The other race that stepped in caused big problems. These beings came from the nearby planet of Mars. See, according to Thoth, Mars looked very much like Earth a little less than 1 million years ago.
They're sunken islands.
Beautiful. It had oceans and water and trees that were just fantastic. But something happened to them, and it has to do with something called the Lucifer experiment. From the very beginning of creation, everything is simply an experiment. Creation itself was just consciousness
look at that symbol.
creating
You
and
see
inhabiting itself in that creation. There is no divine plan.
There's no divine plan.
It can do whatever it wants.
Whatever.
Having said that, if Spirit decides to cut itself off from the rest of consciousness and create a separate reality on its own, it can do that too. This is called the Lucifer experiment.
Here's the drop. Listen.
Because Spirit is God, it can do this. There is nothing wrong with that. We've kind of been led to believe that Lucifer is evil and the devil. This just isn't true. Lucifer is just another means of perceiving the reality. It is not a unity perception of oneness, but rather a duality perception of two-ness.
They just sold you on Lucifer. I can tell you videos of black leaders that have so much drop, but then they'll sell you on Lucifer and tell you the same thing he's saying. Why are they saying the same thing? Who got the drop? They don't care about restoring Israel. And many black leaders don't care about restoring Israel. It's just a myth, right? But you hear from their own mouths that you're a myth to them. From their own documentation, you're a fable to them. They think you came maybe out of Central Asia, right? Because they have to try to connect that. But it's the truth sounds stranger than fiction. He just sold you on Lucifer, the duality. That's the Lucifer experiment, duality, right? Yin, yang, as above, so all these concepts, you can try to apply them to hey, but that's not what he said, right? So that has to be trickery. You know what I'm saying? I do it sometimes, and I talk about duality and different things, and it's so natural, right? Because it makes sense, right? Everything's balanced. It just makes sense. But see, order is heya, period. There's no duality in that, in a sense. Of course, heya is balanced in himself, with himself, within that energy we're talking about, right? So we understand that the male and female principles based on heya. Based on his words, we can understand wisdom is feminine. The earth is feminine. The moon is feminine. But we don't worship those things, do we? But they're going to break you down on duality. So now it's not just heya. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So now you talk to other people, if you take some of this, you mix it with this, then you got to keep yourself open so that you can get some of this and then some of that. And keep opening yourself to get all this other stuff. And you're missing the whole target. Because you're going to keep expanding forever, just like the universe, right? But if you go within the target, you're going to get all the drop because you connect to the throne of the information above the firmament. But first, you got to give it up to the center, to heya. You got to give it to Israel. You got to give it to the nations that were carved with his energy signature to raise again the vibration. When you see us connecting, we're not trying to, we have to. This is where your duality comes from, the Lucifer experiment.
There's a flower of life pattern for Lucifer as well, but that's a big topic for another time.
I'm sure there is.
Anytime the Lucifer experiment has been attempted in the universe, it always ends in failure. The species will cut itself off from love and will become incredibly male, left-brained. What always ends up happening is that everyone becomes very greedy. There is no compassion for one another, and everyone ends up fighting until they...
Sound familiar? Are we not in the process of the Lucifer experiment? And what frequency, what symbol do they use on their money? The pyramid. Is this chaos or order? Is this what they're saying? Oh, watch out. This is about to happen to your cities. Well, yeah, that's natural for them. America has been at war 98% 8% of the damn time of the establishment of the Corporation of America. It's been at war. This is the frequency. It's 440. It's the pyramid. You predate the pyramid here. And as a nation, we vibrate our own so-called Merkaba within us that connects to the throne. They create synthetic Merkabas, synthetic chakras, synthetic grids. Is that order or chaos?
End up killing themselves. More than 1 million years ago, the beings on Mars joined the Lucifer experiment, and it failed dramatically. Basically, they cut themselves off from the unity of the universe and created a separate reality. When the Martians severed the love bond, they became pure male, logical beings with no emotions. What happened on Mars was that they ended up fighting. Mars became a battleground. Eventually, it became clear that Mars was not going to survive. They blew their atmosphere away and destroyed the surface of the planet. Nova recently did an episode on planetary magnetics, and they found some interesting things about Mars. The planet didn't have a magnet.
So they blew up or destroyed wherever they came from, whatever lands was for them, right? So if you look at that as Japheth, right? Seeds of Gomer and all this kind of stuff like that mixed with these Nephilim seeds, right? Now, these are all dark people. So when I say Japheth, don't think white people. These are all dark people. I'm giving you the true history. And whatever came out of that, came out of that. No one just came and said, hey, I'm white. We're keeping it true. That's not natural. So something happened. We're getting to the babies. The truth is uncomfortable. If you're feeling uncomfortable, good. Welcome to truth. Welcome to the drop. You are Drop Nation. You're the nation getting it. You're the nation receiving and giving it. You're going to give it to everyone in order. But you got to humble yourself to, all that exists, the existence itself. So they destroyed where they came from, came over here and jacked your shit.
System. However, the surface was magnetized, implying that at one point it did, but that something happened. Now, we've been discussing the star tetrahedron before, and now I want to give you a brief understanding of the Merkaba.
Check it out.
The Merkaba was known in ancient times as the Chariot of Ascension. It is the star tetrahedral energy field around the body. All around the world, there are references to this in ancient texts. When activated to its full potential, the Merkaba...
Chariots. They just showed you chariots. Oh my goodness. I'm just getting this as I'm watching this. So they said in ancient times, you did it yourself. You didn't need pyramids. The Most High created this earth. He didn't need artificial harmonics. Of course the pyramids are on 440 hertz. They're artificial. The earth is in 432. The instruments are in 432. It ain't 440. So why is the King's Chamber in the Pyramid of Giza resonating at 440 hertz? You got the document. It's right there underneath. Click it. Find it. Click it. You already have this in you. They're showing you what you naturally have. When you connect within, you create your own chariot. You don't need artificial tuning. That makes no sense that the creator would need something else to balance him. All that exists. This is you.
Which is both a tool and part of your being, can be used to do the impossible, included but not limited to changing dimensions and traveling through the universe.
Wow.
Before Mars was destroyed, they built huge tetrahedral pyramids. They built 3, 4, and 5-sided pyramids, eventually building a complex that was able to build a synthetic Merkaba.
Do you understand? They built synthetic Merkabas using pyramids back then. That's the Lucifer experiment. Who is in 440 hertz? Who's the chief? Mastima, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, right? It's just an energy that I call the Goomba. He's the goon. If you have order, you need a goon to enforce things. He's the enforcer. That's why he asked the Most High in Jubilees, please don't destroy all my peoples. Can I just hold like 10% of them? Then I can do your work and jam everybody up. He's the goon. Most High said, man, go do work, man. In Job, he's walking to and fro. Where you come from, man? Just walking back and forth on the earth, jamming people up, doing what it do with those angels you gave me. What's poppin'? You dig? And just because he met the Most High in heaven doesn't mean he went above the firmament. Remember, The heavens begin with the celestial. So those are the heavens. But they're not the upper higher heavens. Those are called your higher heavens. Again, that's why music 2 into 440 hertz, just like the King's Chamber of the Pyramid of Giza, Great Pyramid, and probably many others, it disconnects 8 out of 12. Excuse me, it only connects to 8 out of 12 the musical octaves. In music, that's just music science 101. So 440, if it disconnects, if it's only connecting 8 out of 12 and it disconnects 4 higher octaves, could those be the 4 higher heavens above the firmament? And is that why the scientists call it junk DNA?
After 1 million years or so, it's been eroded, but the proof is there. Now, because the Martians were severed from the Unity consciousness, they couldn't create a living Merkaba. They simply used it as a tool. They created a synthetic Merkaba to travel in time and find a new home. A small group of Martians tried to get away from Mars before it was destroyed, and that place they found was Earth. About 65,000 years in our past. They saw this little vortex sitting there, just pulling in life, with no one in it.
They found your land.
Part of the Lucifer experiment, they just said, all right, let's do it.
They found America. Watch how he ties this in. Just to let you know we are absolutely correct.
Stepped onto that vortex, and in doing so, they joined and changed our evolutionary.
That's Columbus, motherfucker.
Father, Rome, was one of the Nials who set up Atlantis on the island of Udal. That island, the top of the Tree of Life, was the brain of Atlantis, and on it was
Poseidon, Udal. We just read in Thoth, in the Emerald Tablets, how his father, set up the island of Undal. Udal, Undal. Same damn thing. And they're calling this Poseidon right to your face, in case you forgot. In case you thought the Greek stuff, I'm just saying it just to say I'm saying it to keep you suited up. So you know when they drop Poseidon on you, they're just trying to confuse you. Again, Poseidon is the son of Zeus, which I believe might also relate to being Canaan, and Ham, or Ham. However this works, I don't know. I'm still suffering, and I'm sure y'all probably are already ahead of me, because you guys are very intelligent. You've helped me get this far, so thank you. So Poseidon does something to emasculate Zeus. They have a beef. Same way you got Ham and Canaan, the curse. He goes to America, sets up shop, mates with the native people, sets up kings, dynasties. Now you got the Grand Canyon and the old stuff popping up from, Arizona to Illinois. And now they're calling the specific place Poseidon, not the whole thing. This particular island right here. Just this little area. And that's the part mainly that got sunk. This is the part that connects. This is America's over here, and Africa and Asia over here. This is your connection. Then you got the Canary Islands, you got the Pillars of Hercules, that little part, and then you got the Mediterranean Sea. Then you got Europe. Before, they were only navigating this area. They called everything outside of that the true ocean. They couldn't get in or out because these forces had them on lock. These people were subjugated and kept in the middle. So they can only kind of go around here and go to Africa and do different things. They never went all the way through Asia or Africa because they couldn't, because of the tribes, right? So they couldn't get through. They kept right there. The Pillars of Hercules, Poseidon set up shop right here at the gateway to keep the power over these little pillars so that these people don't get out the Mediterranean Sea into the true ocean, because over here is America's, and then you got both poles, North and South Pole, are next to each other, either beyond the ice or before the ice. I don't know. You're going to hear him say how one of the poles used to be near Hawaii. That might be dropped right there. I don't know. But we're journeying, we're suffering, we're just putting a running theory, a hypothesis. So when it went down, this was sunk because these people that were, according to order, kept here in the old world finally got through the Pillars of Hercules, past the Canary Islands. You know what I mean? You got Morocco, Africa. I'm sorry, I'm over here. Africa. Now they got through to the Mediterranean Sea. They got here. But if you get through here, you get to a Peru, you get to South America, and that's where order was being kept. So the Most High sunk this, just like that target, boom. And in their writings, the Greeks write, Plato writes, Socrates writes, that all of your warlike men were drowned and sunk. All of your warlike men. Now you got what? That sounds very similar to, you know what I'm saying, in a sense, the crossing of the Red Sea and the Egyptians and them escaping, the warlike men, and something being sunk and all their army being lost. I mean, all this stuff seems to be running around this thing, right? So we can get a true, concrete understanding of our history, just like the scriptures prophesy. We will wake up again and understand who we are, and we'll mourn for our ancestors that we lost in the struggle here. They came here and told you were from here, and they took you from here. You got family that look just like you here because they came from here. Watch how he calls this Poseidon again. He knows we're talking about Thoth in Egypt, but he's going to call this Poseidon. This is the drop. Stay with me. Rock with me. Get some popcorn, get some coconut water. Let's go. It's the best show on earth, man. If you ain't tuned to this, and you over there
After a million years or so, it's been eroded, but the proof is there.
milking in box.
Because the Martians were severed from the unity consciousness, they couldn't create a living Merkaba. They simply used it as a tool. They created a synthetic Merkaba to travel in time and find a new home. A small group of Martians tried to get away from Mars before it was destroyed, and that place they found was Earth. About 65,000 years in our past. They saw this little vortex sitting there, just pulling in life, with no one in it.
They saw America.
Permission, being part of the Lucifer experiment, they just said, all right, let's do it. And they stepped onto that vortex, and in doing so, they joined and changed our evolutionary path.
Colonizers.
Thoth's father, Thom, was one of the Nials who set up Atlantis on the island of Udal. That island, the top of the Tree of Life.
Now, he says Thoth's father, Thom, which is what we just read. All right? He says, my father... I'm actually going to get that for this, because I want to keep at it. Alright. It's good drop, y'all. Good drop. Rock with me. Trying to see where he mentions the name of his father here. Oh, it's at the very beginning. Okay, there we go. He says, and of all these, greatest among the children. This is the Emerald Tablets. This is the Emerald Tablets, Tablet 1. You got the drop. Open the link. Scroll down right to this area right here where I'm reading. You can pause it and read it yourself where it says, Thoth me. That's Thoth Moses. Thoth said he incarnated over 1,000 times, right? That's what he's saying. So that's his secret to this everlasting and this living forever type of thing. But they're only living forever according to the grid. Once the grid is done and the firmament above takes control, destroys their order, they're not going to be able to live forever like they think they will. They're going to be judged. But that's Thoth. That's Thoth's father. That's what I'm reading. He says, so according, and of all these greatest among the children of men was my father, Thothme, Thotme, keeper of the great temple, link between the children of light who dwell within the temple and the races of men, which means he's half and half, right? So if he's half and half, then maybe I stand corrected, right? If he's a demigod, if Thoth's father is the link between the children of light, which are the angels, the fallen angels, who dwelt within the temple, that's the ruling party that kept you in 440 with the pyramids, and he's the link between the fallen angels and the races of men who inhabited the 10 islands, meaning the natives. So he was the mixture of the native and the angel, right? So that's not Poseidon. That would be who they're calling Atlas, which is what Atlantis is named after. It's a plural form of Atlas. So Thoth's father is Atlas, which would make Poseidon his granddaddy. Let go. Let's back it up, motherfucker. This drop is awesome. I mean, this. If you ain't having fun, I'm sorry.
65,000 years in our past. They saw this little vortex sitting
I'll
there
be
just
selfish.
pulling in life with
I'm
no
having
one
a great
in
time.
it. They didn't ask permission. Being part of the Lucifer experiment,
'Cause it's
they
true.
just said, all right, let's do it.
Rock with
And
me.
they stepped onto that vortex, and in doing so, they joined and changed our evolutionary path. Thoth's father, Thome, was one of the
See?
Nials who
Thoth's
set up
father,
Atlantis
Thome.
on the island of Udal.
Udal.
That island, the top of the Tree of Life, was the brain of Atlantis, and on it was a small city called Poseidon. This city is what Plato was discussing when he said that Poseidon bore 10 children, the 10 circles on the Tree of Life.
10
Poseidon
kings,
was made
10
of 10 rings
kings.
painted in black, red, and white stones, and it was the symbol for Atlantis. The inner circle represented the Nials. The middle circle were the priesthood, called the Maya, and
Whoa.
the outer circle represented the regular people of Atlantis.
Whoa. So he said his people dwelt in the temple, right? So this was the temple of the fallen angels. Outside of that was the priesthood, right? The Maya. Now again, we didn't call ourselves Maya. So whatever that is a representation, however they're breaking it. You know what I'm saying? But the Maya. Then you got the regular people. See, so these people weren't the fallen angels. See, these were the regular indigenous people. These possibly are the priests of the indigenous people, so they let them rock. It wasn't like we're going to take everything. It's like we control this, but y'all can still rock. Possibly. That's the journey. I'm hypothesizing. So perhaps these Lemurians or Lemericans, Lemuria, Lemerica, and this is the priesthood, the Maya. All right. We also hear about the Inca. We hear about the Aztec. Right. The Nials. These were the ascended masters of the light. This was Thoth in them, controlling things. And that's where they set up shop right there where you saw that target. You know, they're at the center. So when this was sunk, they were sunk for the most part. Right. Interesting. Yes.
Atlantis. We'll come back to this down the road. There were only a few thousand Martians who came to Earth through the synthetic Merkaba. The first thing they did when they arrived in Atlantis was try to take over the continent.
Whoa.
They tried to declare war and invade. However, they were vulnerable due to their small numbers compared to the millions of Atlanteans, and we finally subdued them.
We? No, you weren't here, buddy. We subdued them finally. You can read their documents when they're saying, man, we're getting our asses kicked. We need to sign treaties with these people. So they came over here at a few thousand at a time. And then they started some shit. They got their asses kicked. Now you can read about the Gullah Wars, the Guwal, right? Lex will drop it on you. Higher Mark will drop it on you, right? Let's go. This is their colonization story. He's just fucking with you. And watch how he puts it together.
Able to stop them from conquering us, but we could not send them back. When this happened on our evolutionary
We couldn't send them back.
we now had the planetary consciousness of a 14-year-old girl. The Martians were an incredibly male species, and also very old. So what you had was a 14-year-old girl being taken over by a 60 or 70-year-old.
Are they mocking you? Do you understand that they represent Lucifer, and they told you Lucifer is good, don't worry. So they're going to act like they're the good guys, and they're going to keep flip-flopping. Sometimes they're him, sometimes they're talking about you. So I'm going to just keep letting you know when they're talking about your ass. So they're saying you had the consciousness of a girl, and they were just some old man conscious, and they took you over. Or was this the devil? Slapping you upside the head as he's been ordered to do, because you've already been worshiping him here for a long time. Or else you would not have been destroyed by him in order of the destruction of Hey. And that's taking responsibility. We all got to take that and then come back.
We had no choice in the matter. The Martians just stepped in and said, like it or not, we're here. They didn't care what we thought or felt about it.
Wow.
Really, it was no different from what the settlers of North America did to the Native Americans.
Whoa!
What?
It was no different from what the settlers of North America did to the Americans. He just told you there's no difference in what he's bullshitting you with and the story of what happened to the Americans. You want to see it again? to know that we're talking about, these are the babies I wanted to get out of this. Because they're talking about our story, but they're going to bullshit us a lot with balls of water and bullshit. But we're getting to even more drop. But I will take that back one time, and then I'm going to do a dismount and go to part 3. We're only 12 minutes into this. I can't get through the whole thing. It's a whole hour. You watch it, but I'm going to get to a point. And you research it and get back to me so that we on the same page.
But we could not send them back.
We couldn't send them
When
back.
this happened on our evolutionary path, we now had the planetary consciousness of a 14-year-old girl. The Martians were an incredibly male species, and also very old. So what you had was a 14-year-old girl being taken over by a 60 or 70-year-old man. We had no choice in the matter. The Martians just stepped in and said, like it or not, we're here. They didn't care what we thought or felt about it. Really, it was no different from what the settlers of North America did to the Native Americans. Once the initial conflict was over, it was agreed that the Martians would try and understand this female thing they lacked. This emotional feeling, which they had none of at all. Things more or less the Martians slowly began to implement their left brain.
When they say emotion and right brain, they're just saying that you come from Heya. And Heya, it's not all left brainy. It's not all like, oh, I need sources to do this and connect this. And you were already connected, so you were just existing. You can just exist. You can go your own. You're limitless and boundless in Heya, but you gotta be in order. They have their orders. You have your order. They take their orders very seriously, do they not? So you have to take your order 10 times more serious. Your order is the commandments. They're mocking you. They came and they took over shit. And watch how it fucking ends.
Technologies, which the Atlanteans knew nothing about.
Technologies. They brought
tech. Kept putting out these left brain inventions.
Look.
Until the Atlanteans slowly began to see things through their left brain.
440.
Slowly began to become a male species. The Martians gained
440.
control bit by bit until...
You understand? This is the war between 432 and 440 that they're saying. But you're 432 and they finally got you into 440. When you're only looking at it like them with left brain, you don't understand the spiritual power, the spiritual boundlessness to be able to, get to one point to another point just like that. Wake your ass up. So they're calling you right-brainers, little girls. They're mocking you. And you forgot hey, and they turned you into them. Now you're on their technology. We're on their technology. We think like them. We're trying to put the pieces back together thinking like them. And that's what throws us off. And we're all victim of that. We're all guilty of that.
Eventually, they had all of the power, as was their intention. The animosity between Atlanteans and the Martians never subsided, not even till the end of Atlantis. They hated each other.
We've been fighting ever since. We've been fighting.
Inferiors. It was like a marriage that the female component didn't like, but the male component didn't really care if she liked it or not.
Wow.
It remained this way for a very long time, until about 26,000 years ago.
Whoa.
The next phase slowly...
Whoa. You see the trickery. They just brought you into recent times. They told you World War I. They gave you present time timelines this whole time, and now they just brought you back 20,000 years. Just to fuck with you. Us, right? So, alright. Don't get fooled by their timeline of millions of years. That's their evolution shit, and that's their Baal shit. They tell you that, and then they give you an image. When they give you a graven image, remember, no images of above, below, anything. Oh, let's take it all. Here's your world. Here's an image of it. It's a ball. I'm going to put it in the classroom. Copernican. Newtonian. The Church of London in England, they say, cool, we like this. And then the churches started folding up their flat earth maps, their real maps, and they started hiding them. And that became that became like a demonic thing, because they weren't worshiping the new situation where it's going around the sun, the Helios. It always goes back to this Helios, Apollo, Abaddon, Apollyon, the destroyer, right? But he has to come get the keys to the underground, right? Because he is in order. You think the Most High is just allowing him to get the keys? It's order. So yeah, don't be fooled by their timelines, man. We're still talking about present time.
They began. Before we continue, we have to talk about polar shifts. See, in the 1930s...
Here's where we're going to try to flip it.
Information for a geologist.
This pole shift shit, they're going to try to, say, the globe and the poles. Just focus on our information. So we know both poles are over here in the Western Hemisphere, according to our theory, should I say. We're hypothesizing that both poles, we're theorizing, both poles are over here, not there. So when they got through the pillars of of Hercules into the New World, now they had access to this higher dimension of stuff because both poles are over here and they might be side by side beyond our, wall over here of Antarctica. You know what I'm saying? Beyond that ice where there's more land. Who knows? So they're going to talk about pole shifts. Again, if the poles are just here and they're not like a ball like this, then we're just talking about literally like not even them physically shifting, but, going back and forth. We're talking about a cycle that they're going back and forth. So focus on that while they drop this drop.
And he stopped and he said, "There's something you should know. In the near future, the Earth's poles are going to shift." Casey was a brilliant man with a very strong connection to higher dimensions, where he communicated with other beings for the human race. Ultimately, it was because of his channelings that the belief system called New Age was created. This is again just putting what he was doing into boxes of understanding, because no one else understood what he was doing at that time.
Syncretism. Boxes of understanding, they're merging into one thing. We're going through this to get the babies because they've mixed it and merged it. They went back 20,000 years and they're going to tell you World War One. You dig? Look how they just mix it all together and then they say, that's bullshit, right? That's Luciferian, right? Alright.
Nevertheless, when Casey talked, people listened. Geologists began exploring the possibility of a polar shift, and they found something remarkable. A string of major pieces of evidence came forth and lent tremendous weight to what Casey was saying, and they have now changed the world's view on the subject. Scientists believed that if there was going to be a physical pole shift, there would also be a change in the magnetic poles. Through studying lava beds, geologists were able to see where the planetary magnetics were when the lava beds hardened at certain depths. They found that the earlier magnetic poles were not where they were now, but in Hawaii. The last shift that took place was 13,000 years ago, and we will get there in the story soon.
Don't worry about that.
They did another test and found that it had shifted again 26,000 years ago as well. Scientists also learned that polar shifts happen very quickly. In a single day, the magnetics would do a complete flip, or turn 90 degrees. There's that number again. And within 24 hours,
What is interesting about that drop with the 13,000 years is that some people say, okay, well, the Earth might be that old. So if you look at it from there, it kind of combines those theories of the Earth might be 12,000 years old, 13,000 years old. They're saying a shift happened, right? So is that what got us on the frequency, that 216, right? And now we're at the end of that 216. Remember, the mark of man, 666. If you look at it, if we're theorizing 6 times 6 times 6, 216 base frequency, and we're moving into 432, you have to double the 216 to get to the 432. So now you have, I guess, that particular cycle. If you look at it like a cycle, then you can divide 216 and say that that's a lower dimension or a lower cycle that might have existed prior. But a lot of things are on top of each other when you talk about energy and vibrational layers and things that we really don't understand. So let's not all act like we got the drop. I don't have it. I'm just putting a hypothesis, and you're helping me with that. We're all journeying with that, and we're going somewhere. We're getting somewhere. So, of course, we know Earth don't look like this. They're talking about poles. I'm saying the poles are just together. So the shift is just really happening like an on and off switch. Like, go this way, go that way. And you're going to see him use a diagram with Thoth looking at the sun coming this way, then the sun coming that way. Sun coming this way. Like, that's his shift. The shift of the sun. So all you got to do is literally say, okay, sun, shift that way. And then it shifts that way. You could also call it clockwise, counterclockwise. But that gets into the time travel drop. When I told y'all, I figured out how to time travel. But I can't drop it because I know someone's going to use it irresponsibly. Let's go.
The sun would be rising differently than it did the previous day. This shift has happened hundreds of times over the last 100 million years on Earth. But it's speeding up now and happening faster and faster. Now only 13,000 years between each shift. A whole new viewpoint is beginning to be understood. From space, would this not appear as a pulse? Now, there's a lot more to talk about with polar shifts, but I'm going to give...
Not even space, but is that not the pulse? Are we talking about the pulse of Mother Earth vibrating energy and the pulse of the heartbeat, or the pulse, you know what I'm saying? And the shift is literally like a pulse. It's like, oh, Time. It's just a shift. It's just how the body works. It's how Mother Earth's body works. But is order destroyed in her shift? No, you're still here, right? For now. We know we're out of order. We need to get in order. Let's go.
View the basics. A scientist named Charles Hapgood was studying this at great detail because the leading theory behind what caused polar shifts was still underdeveloped at the time. He came up with a theory that demonstrated it to be possible through various experiments. Through these experiments, they learned that the surface of the Earth, the crust, could slip over the main mass of the Earth, which continues its rotation as if nothing happened. The crust would rotate and spin out of control until eventually it settles again in a new location aligned with the new magnetics. During this time, there are massive earthquakes and tsunamis and devastations that rock the world. Doesn't that sound a bit like the destruction described in the Book of Revelations?
Back
now,
to the book.
I don't want to freak anyone out. Besides Edgar Casey's account, many other ancient prophecies, including Nostradamus and Mayan prophecies, have talked about polar shifts in one way or another. And modern science is becoming increasingly aware that there is going to be a polar shift in our near future, which is lining up with our consciousness shift, though they don't take that aspect into account.
432.
It's funny, actually. A while back, Nova did 2 reports on polar shifts, and both times NASA shut them down. Then recently, Nova released a new video called Earth's Magnetic Storm. That video shows all of the evidence for pole shifts without actually using the words pole shift. It's almost as if a specific company doesn't want us knowing about this and the evidence that's been brought forth.
See, that's how they try to win you back. But then they're going to talk about Lucifer.
Of the planet as well. Planetary magnetics are supposed to look like this, but the reality is much different. Our magnetics have been weakening over the last 500 years or so, and today they look a little more like this. It was the magnetics becoming more and more warped that's causing many of the problems we've seen in the last 20 years. Birds follow the magnetics of the planet to migrate, and they'd be ending up in places they shouldn't be. Whales were continually beaching themselves in the 90s because they followed these magnetics, which led them to land where there should have been water. As for humans, you know how on the night of the full moon there are more rapes, murders, and violent crimes than any other night of the lunar cycle? Well, the moon affects the magnetics of the Earth, slightly. But the magnetics are so warped right now, it's affecting how we think and act as a planet. Our collapse of social structure is related to the geomagnetics of the Earth. Or perhaps it's the other way around. There's one...
Perhaps it's the other way around. Is our social structure related to the geomagnetics of the Earth? Or is the geomagnetics of the Earth related to our social structure? Perhaps it's the other way around. No, it is the other way around. When they came here, they put their harmonics on you. They put their 440, Poseidon in his gang, Zeus in his gang. These fallen entities in their gang, the Nephilim in their gang, Mastema in his gang, 440. Created a social structure of chaos, just like the somatics experiments show you what 440 does. 432 gets you into order. Every sand particle goes into line, whatever that design is. So when I'm saying we're here waking up, we are the sand. It is the sound vibration of the word within us, vibrating us back into a design. Chaos can't exist. That's why you're weakening. That's why your arguments are weakening. That's why this Kemet stuff is weakening. Well, we can now link it and say there's a difference between the Egyptian Atlanteans and the Cometians that were there, that they said they attacked them with spears. And then these Atlanteans put the vibration on them, the staff on them. Remember that? Huh? Fast we fled toward the sun of the morning, until beneath us lay the land of the children of Ham. Emerald tablets, first tablet. Raging, they came with cudgels and spears, lifted in anger, seeking to slay and utterly destroy the sons of Atlantis. Is there not a difference between you? Which side were you on? Are you the angel side? Or were you the side that was like, get the fuck away from here? And you came with spears, and they put a vibration on you, and then what happened? Then I raised my staff and directed a ray of vibration, striking them still in their tracks as fragments of stone of the mountain. Does that sound like he did something nice to you, or he kind of fucked you up? And that's why you're, rocking this stuff today. He said, then I raised my staff and directed a ray vibration, and striking them still in the tracks as fragments of stone of the mountain. Then spoke I to them in words calm and peaceful. Then I said, okay, now that I got control over you, I can get in your head. Telling them the might of Atlantis. So he was telling the Cometians, the natives there, the indigenous melanated family there, that was in 432, he was telling them the might of this 440. Saying, we are children of the sun and its messengers. Cowed I them. Cold or cowed I them by my dismay. So I made them cowardly. I brought them, I distracted them by my display of magic science, right? The magic, the mystery schools. That's what he put on you. That's what you're still doing today. It's destroying you and your community. You see the chaos is forming. You see the chaos around you. You see the result. Open your eyes. Use your senses. That's repeatable, observable science. Be scientific about these leaders. You can do it. Cowed I them by my display of magic science until at my feet they groveled. He brought you and you became a slave. Thoth, Tahuti, Mercury, Hermes, Tutmosis III, fallen angels, Nephilim, my steamer's army, the children of the light, Lucifer, whatever you want to call them. They made you a slave then. This is their documentation of it. The Emerald Tablets. Cowed I them by my display of magic science until at my feet they groveled when I released them. Then he let them go out of the vibration they were in. Long dwelt we in the land of Chem. Long and yet long again. Pause it. If you can read it, read it. If you can get that, pause it and get that. Okay? Ain't nobody messing with you. We're just journeying along. We're going to go to part 3. I'm going to hit you with this last little part. And we're going to go.
To discuss about polar shifts. They always line up with a consciousness shift. They are interrelated. Thoth lived on Atlantis for a very long time, and he told us that he saw the Earth shift.
He lived on Atlantis for a very long time. He said, dwelt I then for a long time. That's Atlantis here. Then he went over there and set up a new Atlantis in the 18th dynasty, Tutmosis III. Now we got a new Atlantis, right? That's why they say, oh, Atlantis is Africa, right? You hear that? Atlantis is Africa. Well, yeah. The Atlanteans started here, which is why the pyramids are older. Then in their story, when Atlantis was sunk, then they went to the land of Kemet. Now they built that in the 18th dynasty. And these were fallen angels that put a vibration on the indigenous family. And they got you in 440 with their vibration. Their pyramids are checking out in 440 hertz. They're not you. Get out of Babylon. Come home to the Creator. You belong to the Creator. Listen to what he says again.
5 times. Watching the sun rise in the east, and then the west, then the east, then the west.
The sun.
This is how to explain
That's your
why
pole
during a
shift.
consciousness shift at the end of Lemuria, it sank beneath the oceans and Atlantis rose. If the crust was spinning randomly around the planet, many geological events such as continents rising and falling would take place. Now that we have an understanding of polar shifts, we can continue with this drama on Atlantis.
Drama.
26,000 years ago, we were exactly where we were today on the precession of the equinox. We had gone through our falling asleep phase, and we were about to begin waking up. It was at this point that there was a small consciousness shift. We actually went down in consciousness, not up. A piece of Atlantis about the size of Rhode Island sank into the ocean. This caused a tremendous amount of fear within the Atlanteans, because they thought they were going to...
It was only a piece. You're still living in Atlantis. Peru, Heru, Jerusalem. Someone sent me that, he said, yeah, Peru, Heru, like it was some Egyptian thing. Horace Butler writes it like it's an Egyptian thing. We see now that this was a fallen angel thing. And any Heru or anything here don't belong here. This is an indigenous sovereign land, which is why it was smitten to nothing. And if they do it again, it's going to be smitten to nothing because your harmonics don't work here. We are free from your vibration. We are returning to our Creator.
Lose the whole continent, like what happened with Lemuria. Because of the consciousness shift, one of the bigger things they lost was their connection to the future. They couldn't foresee big events such as the potential sinking of their home.
They lost their connection to,
fear began to subside. Now, in both the Bible and the Sumerian records, the accounts of Adam, Eve, and all of their children were recorded to have exceptionally long lifespans, like 900 years or so. So 200 years for us back then is like 20 years for us today. We'll explain how we got there soon. Things kind of settled for a while, and then between 13,000 and 16,000 years ago, a comet approached the Earth.
Okay.
Because we were living at a high consciousness across all dimensions, the Atlanteans became aware of it before it hit. A great conflict occurred in Atlantis. The Martians, who were in the minority, even though they were in control, wanted to blow it out of the sky with their laser technology. However, the Nials had learned of the comet's true nature, and the Atlanteans protested. They said that the comet was in divine order. They had to...
So these guys knew that the Most High has sent it. Remember, they said it's in divine order. Let's get that again. And this was the missile that sunk the continent. That little continent they say is the size of Rhode Island, not the whole thing. You're in it right now. When you see Egypt, when you go to the Grand Canyon, you're looking at Atlantis. It was hidden right underneath your nose. And now you got your senses, you can smell it. Get that back.
Years ago, a comet approached the Earth.
Okay.
Because we were living at a high consciousness across all dimensions.
This comet is the Most High's missile. This is his judgment. And they were like, yo, let's shoot it. And the call said, you can't, man. And they convinced them, and they said, ah, shit, we just got to let this thing happen. And they were destroyed. Most of them.
The Atlanteans became aware of it before it hit. A great conflict occurred in Atlantis. The Martians, who were in the minority, even though they were in control, wanted to blow it out of the sky with their...
They were in minority, even though they were in control. Does that sound familiar? Who else is in the minority? Right now. Right now. Who's the power of minority? But they're in control. Who has the numbers? The people or the ruling class?
Laser technology. However, the Nials had learned of the comet's true nature, and the Atlanteans protested. They said that the comet was in divine order. They had to allow it to take place naturally.
Wow.
Let it hit the Earth.
Wow.
That's what's supposed to happen. The Martians fought the Atlanteans, but in the end they gave in. The Martians agreed to let it hit the Earth.
They had to.
When the time arrived, it came screaming into the atmosphere, plunging into the Atlantic Ocean just off to the western shores of Atlantis, near where Charleston, South Carolina is now. Only that was at the bottom of the ocean at the time. The remnants of the comet are now scattered across...
They brought you to America, right? So stop it with this Atlantis shit. This is America. It became Atlantis when we're now naming it after Atlas. And the plural form of Atlas is Atlantis, who is a fallen angel. So when you hear Atlantis, that's fallen angel talk for your land. At least America is closer, right? L'America, Lemuria. We're getting there, right? Either way, man. Kwan Yasharala. Now, this thing hit, right? They're saying they're South Carolina, whatever the case is. I don't know. Whatever. But what happened?
4 states, and science has definitely determined that it hit at least 12,000 years ago, if not more. They're still finding pieces today. Although the main portion struck near Charleston, a few fragments actually hit the main body of Atlantis, crashing into an area right where the Martians were living, killing a huge portion of their population.
Yo, I know it's confusing because you keep going back and forth in the timeline. I'm saying they're fucking with you. They're giving you a story. The Atlantis story, sinking, and all this kind of stuff like that. Yeah. So you have the sinking of that correlating with this Columbus shit, right? Because history repeats itself, right? Do you understand the cycles? You understand that this is the end of that cycle. So, in that Greek, mythology with the Plato and the Socrates, when they're saying the Athenians warring against the Atlanteans in this war that's going on, then this stuff went down, and you're the result of it. Then came these same entities, the same energy, with the same pyramid on the back of the dollar. Then they came and found your ass and did it again. And you had the same experience. Now, what happened last time? That's why we have to go to the wilderness. Because it's going to happen again. It's going to be destruction. You can hope to magically escape it. But this is not magic. This is actually real time. You have to get into safety zones. There are places on this earth that are safety zones. Perhaps it's the ones that haven't been touched. And that's when you look at the Four Corners. And that's when you look at Zion National Park and these particular areas that seem to have not been touched by divine order. Let's go.
They were pissed. They said, it's all over. We're divorcing you, and we're gonna do whatever we want. You can do what you want, but we will never listen to you again. We know this whole bit. We've seen it in divorced families throughout the world.
That's your beef today. You come from the people that said, fuck you. And they said, fuck you. If you got a problem with cursing, turn away. Because these English words don't have no power. If you want me to curse you, then I will slay you. That's cursing somebody. You curse them to be slayed. That's cursing. These English words have no power over you. So stop being Christians and stop thinking like that. That's their sorcery, right? So he said, fuck you. He said, fuck you. Get out of here. You get out of here. That's our war. The people that kicked these entities out and wanted them out, and the Most High destroyed them. He destroyed them for him. I guess, right? He's the Hebrew. Remember the Hebrew was purple? Now you pay attention. They put these guys back in purple for you, right? He's not green, is he? The green guy was the nice little Sumerian native guy, right? Now they gave you the purple guy. The purple guy, I just caught this. This was the guy, when you go back, he's the Hebrew. The Hebrew came in purple. The other guys were green, right? Now he's giving you the purple Hebrew. These guys don't do this by accident. Come on, man. And he's arguing with these Martians. And he's saying, F you. He's saying, you do it your way, I'm going to do it my way. Right? Look at how they playing you, man. That's why I said they fucking with you. Let's go.
And the children? Well, look at our modern world today. We are the children. You can get...
Look at our modern world today. We are the children. And you can spin that two ways because they gave you another purple guy. So they're telling you right now that you are the result. You are the children. You're the remnant. Then they give you the Martian guy again.
That's what the Martians did next. Their primary interface with the reality was control. And when their anger rose to meet their desire for control, they decided to take over the Earth. They began to once again create a complex like the one they built on Mars long ago to try and create another synthetic Merkaba.
Synthetic, which is why when you research the Pyramid of Giza, it is an artificial chakra. It is a synthetic energy center. And they set up a what? Synthetic grid. And you're living it. It keeps you trapped in space and time. It keeps you beneath the firmament. 440 only connects you to 8 out of 12 of the musical octaves. It cuts you off from the higher heavens. Dig on it.
If they had succeeded, they would have gained control over everything on the planet. The only thing was, around 50,000 Earth years had passed since they had built a Merkaba, and they didn't quite remember how to do it. But they thought they did. The Martians built the buildings in Atlantis. They set up the whole experiment, threw the switch, and lost control. The destruction was immense. In this reality, you can hardly make a greater error than to create an out-of-control Merkaba. The experiment began to rip open the dimensional levels. Not the higher ones, but the lower ones.
But the lower ones, because they couldn't fade the higher ones. So then they got lower entities coming in because of all this Lucifer pyramid shit. Now, they're going to act like, oh, they did their pyramids, and then we did our own pyramids to balance out their pyramids, right? And that's the trickery. That's the trickery. You know, if certain areas, like he's going to say that most, right? So, like I said, there are some pyramids that may not be in 440. So I'm not saying all. So maybe that's what he's trying to get at. Some are not in 440. But what he's really trying to show you is that they had to do a grid. And now Thoth had to come to the rescue because of these Martians. In reality, these Martians, Thoth, all this stuff that predates, that they keep going back in these dates, these are spin-offs of one and the same. Thoth is just a Nerkal. He's just a higher ascended one. These people came, what, out of Mars and out of some vortex? Nah, man. These were other fallen angels. Other seeds of fallen angels. Warring against each other. Which is why Plato and Socrates writes the Athenians versus the Atlanteans. One seed against another. What? The seed of Ham versus the seed of Poseidon? The seed of Zeus versus the seed of Poseidon? It doesn't matter. It's fallen angels warring for power. They're divided today, believe it or not, warring for power. Their unity is falling while yours is growing. And that's the secret. They can't keep order right now. Let's get through a little bit more of this and we're going to part 3.
A knife and slit open your stomach, the stomach acids would seep into other parts of the body that it's not supposed to be in. That's like ripping open the dimensions. The Martians almost destroyed the Earth. The environmental disaster we are experiencing today is nothing in comparison, though today's disasters are a direct result of these events. Because of this tear in the dimensional levels, a huge number of lower dimensional spirits and
Pay
beings
attention.
were thrown out of their comfort zone and into these higher levels. They were forced into a world that they did not know or understand. To survive, they needed bodies, and
Wow.
began automatically entering into the bodies of people. For every human body,
People became possessed because of one faction of fallen angels, right? Warring against the other ones, that was the situation. Now, this faction, these children of the light, are trying to regain control and have to build a synthetic grid to fix this tear, to fix this mistake, this war accident that they had fighting each other. And we know it's all hey, it's all order. It's all order. Energy, frequency, vibration.
there were hundreds of lower dimensional spirits inhabiting them. These beings were earthlings, like us, but very different, not coming from this dimension.
Huh.
It was a catastrophe, probably the biggest the Earth has ever seen.
Uh-oh.
The reason the Nials were special wasn't just because of their incredibly high consciousness, making them like guides of Atlantis. They also had achieved what today we call immortality. Let's just say they figured out a way to keep their body healthy and young for as long as they chose, and could...
Oh, they figured out a way to do it themselves. Does it sound like they're giving love and credence and honor to the Creator? Or are they saying, oh, these people figured out how to master themselves? These are fallen angels. They can keep it going. Remember, Thoth said he incarnated over 1,000 times because they know how to go to the borders of space and time and do this type of trickery. Only does it exist in space and time. Once order is established, there is no space and time. And that is their destruction. That's their judgment.
choose to pass on whenever they desired it. When reincarnating, they do not suffer the great memory loss that we do when we incarnate. They did it through their expanded consciousness and tantric interdimensional sex meditation.
Sex meditation.
This
Come
is how
on, man.
Thoth was a priest king of Atlantis for thousands of years and stayed on Earth until 15 years ago when he gave all of his memories